On my 16th birthday, parents drop a bombshell. You're moving in with your aunt, no questions asked. So, let me set the scene for you. I had just turned 16, and like any normal kid, I thought I might get a birthday cake. Maybe a lame gift. Something simple, right? Nope. What I got instead was a ticket out of my own house. Literally. My parents didn't even sugarcoat it. They told me, point blank, that they needed my room for the baby. My sister Carla, the golden child, is pregnant, and suddenly, I'm out of there. It wasn't like a discussion or anything. It was like a quick meeting with HR where they tell you you're fired. No emotions, no second thoughts. They just sat me down, looked me straight in the face and said, "You're going to live with Aunt Lydia." I didn't even get a say. I couldn't believe it. It was my birthday, and they couldn't even wait until the next day to throw me out. Now, I've always known Carla was the favorite, okay? She's 22, expecting a baby, and for as long as I can remember, she's been the center of their world. But this? I mean, I wasn't expecting much for my birthday, but getting kicked out of my own room to make space for her unborn baby? Yeah, that's a new low. They didn't even try to soften the blow, no. "Hey, we know this is tough, but we love you," or anything like that. Just, "We need your room for the baby, pack your stuff." And I didn't get it at first, like, okay, fine, Carla's pregnant, but we have a guest room. Why can't they just turn that into the nursery? When I asked, they just kind of looked at each other, then finally came out with it. Matt needs a place to stay too. Matt, Carla's boyfriend. The guy's like 25 and has his own place. But somehow, my parents decided he needed to move into our house too. So yeah, the guest room went to him, and the baby, my room, and me, shipped off to Aunt Lydia's like an old piece of furniture no one wants anymore. I guess I could have fought harder, but what's the point? I've been dealing with this kind of crap my whole life. I've learned to expect nothing from them, because every time I've hoped for even the tiniest bit of love or attention, they let me down. This wasn't a surprise. It was just another reminder that to them, I'm always going to be second place to Carla. Always. The worst part? Carla didn't even bother showing up for this family meeting. I mean, yeah, I get it. She's pregnant and probably didn't want to deal with the awkwardness, but still. It's not like we ever had a super close relationship, but this? It felt like she was just too okay with me being booted out to make space for her new little family. Like, she couldn't even face me while our parents were basically kicking me out of my own home. When I went upstairs to pack, it didn't feel real. I mean, I'd spent my whole life in that room. Every crappy little birthday I'd had, every time I tried to avoid my parents' drama, I'd go up to that room and just zone out. And now, just like that, it wasn't mine anymore. I started throwing stuff into a suitcase, not even sure what I was packing. It felt weird, like I was moving out of my life, not just my room. And it wasn't like my parents helped or anything. They just watched. Like they were waiting for me to hurry up so they could get on with their day. They offered to drive me to Aunt Lydia's like it was some kind of favor. I could have walked, honestly, but at this point, I was too tired to fight it. So I just let them drive me. The whole time in the car, they acted like we were on some normal trip. My mom was talking about dinner plans, like she hadn't just told her son he wasn't welcome in his own house anymore. When we finally pulled up to Aunt Lydia's, there was no emotional moment or anything. They didn't even pretend to care. Just a quick, "Here we are, see you later," before they drove off. Aunt Lydia, on the other hand, looked at me like I was some stray dog that had been left at her doorstep. Not in a bad way, more like she was about to take me in and give me the love I'd been missing out on my whole life. She hugged me as soon as I got out of the car. The difference between her and my parents was so obvious. She actually cared. I could feel it. She didn't even need to say anything, but when I told her what happened, she was furious. When I laid it all out for her, the birthday, the eviction, the baby room stuff, she couldn't believe it. I think at first she thought I was exaggerating, but once I told her the whole story, she got quiet, like she was processing the level of messed up that this situation was. Then, without saying a word to me, she grabbed her phone and walked into the other room. I couldn't hear much, but I knew she was on the phone with my dad because her voice went from calm to super angry in about 2 seconds flat. And that's not like Aunt Lydia at all. She's usually so chill, the type of person who never raises her voice. But whatever my dad said to her must have really pushed her buttons, because I've never heard her yell like that before. When she came back, her face was still red and she looked pissed. She sat down, took a deep breath, and told me what had gone down. Apparently my dad had told her that I wanted to move out, that I was excited to stay with Aunt Lydia for a while, like I'd volunteered to give up my room for the baby. That's why Aunt Lydia didn't question anything when they asked if I could move in. She thought I was the one who wanted to leave. I just sat there, stunned. I mean, I always knew my parents weren't great, but this? Lying to my own aunt to make themselves look better? That was a whole new level of low. Aunt Lydia apologized to me over and over again, saying she would have never agreed to it if she knew the truth. She said she couldn't believe my parents would treat me like that, and that I was welcome to stay with her for as long as I wanted. Honestly, I didn't even know what to say. It felt good to be somewhere where I wasn't treated like garbage for once, but at the same time, I couldn't stop thinking about how messed up my parents were. They didn't even care about me enough to tell the truth. They just wanted me out of the way, and they didn't care how it happened. I went to bed that night in Aunt Lydia's spare room, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I had to walk on eggshells around anyone. I wasn't scared of what mood my mom or dad would be in or worried about Carla getting all the attention. It was peaceful. But there was this weird, empty feeling too, like I'd lost something important, even if that something wasn't that great to begin with. In the end, I guess getting kicked out wasn't the worst thing that could have happened to me. At least now I was with someone who actually gave a damn. But still, it hurt. Knowing that your own parents would rather lie and shove you out of the house than deal with you, that sticks with you. Alright, so I'm living with Aunt Lydia now, and I gotta say, it feels weird. Not in a bad way, but it's just different, you know? I mean, I've lived my entire life under my parents' roof, even if it was a crappy situation most of the time. And now, here I am, in a house where someone actually wants me there. It's almost too much to handle. Aunt Lydia has been super welcoming, like, she's really trying to make sure I feel at home. The first couple of days, she went out of her way to make me feel comfortable, like making me breakfast, asking if I wanted to redecorate my room, stuff like that. It's nice, but honestly, it felt strange at first. I'm not used to anyone caring about what I want. I was so used to just fading into the background at home, and now suddenly here's someone paying attention to me. But I'll admit, it took me a while to get used to it. Like, the first morning after I moved in, I came downstairs and Aunt Lydia had made this huge breakfast. I'm talking pancakes, eggs, bacon, the whole deal. She smiled at me and said, "I thought you could use a good breakfast to start the day." And I just kind of stared at it, like I didn't even know what to do with it. At home, I was lucky if I got a piece of toast before I ran out the door for school. I sat down, ate a bit, and Lydia kept asking me about my plans for the day. And honestly, I didn't have any. I was just trying to wrap my head around everything. The whole moving out thing, my parents not even bothering to check on me, it was all still sinking in. I mean, yeah, I didn't want to live with them anymore, but it's still weird to think about how fast they were willing to throw me out. After breakfast, Aunt Lydia had to go to work, so I was left alone in the house. That was another thing that felt strange. I was just there. No one telling me what to do, no one hovering over me or ignoring me like my parents did. It was quiet, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I had to constantly be on edge. So I decided to make a post online about my story just to get it out. But then, that afternoon, things got interesting. I was just chilling on the couch, minding my own business, when my phone buzzed. It was a text from my mom. Now keep in mind, this was like 2 days after they'd kicked me out, and they hadn't said a word to me since. So I was kind of curious to see what she had to say. The text? "We need to talk." That's it. No, "How are you doing?" or "Are you okay?" Just a cold, robotic, "We need to talk." Honestly, I wasn't sure if I should even bother responding, but curiosity got the best of me, so I replied, "About what?" What followed was a bunch of texts from my mom about how I embarrassed the family by posting online. Apparently, some of my extended family had seen the post, and it had caused a bit of a stir. But instead of asking if I was okay, or maybe realizing how much they'd screwed up, my mom was more concerned about how it made her look. She kept saying things like, "Do you realize how this reflects on us?" And, "You've made things difficult for your father and me." I couldn't believe it. I sat there, reading the texts, just getting angrier and angrier. They kicked me out on my birthday, lied to Aunt Lydia about it, and now I'm the bad guy for telling the truth. I was done with it. I didn't even bother replying after that. I just threw my phone on the couch and tried to distract myself by watching TV. Later that evening, Aunt Lydia came home, and she could tell something was up. I guess I wasn't doing a great job of hiding how pissed off I was. She sat down next to me and asked if I was okay, and at first I didn't want to burden her with all this. But she's got this way of making you feel like it's okay to talk, you know? So I told her about the texts from my mom, how they were more concerned about their reputation than what they'd actually done to me. Aunt Lydia didn't even flinch. She just nodded and said, "That sounds exactly like your parents." I laughed a little because, yeah, it was spot on. Then she said something that really hit me. "You don't owe them anything, you know. You're not responsible for their reputation or how they feel. You're allowed to be angry." And that's when it clicked. I was angry. I'd spent so long just accepting the way things were, letting them treat me like crap because I thought that's just how it was. But now, I was done. I didn't owe them anything. The next few days were a blur of emotions. I started blocking out my parents more and more. I didn't respond to their texts, didn't even look at them after a while. They weren't going to get to me anymore. Aunt Lydia helped me with that too. She didn't say much, but just having her around, knowing she had my back, made everything easier. But things weren't totally calm yet. A few days later, I was at school, just trying to get through the day, when I noticed my parents had shown up. Yep, they actually came to my school like that was going to fix anything. I saw them standing outside the gate, waving me over like nothing was wrong. My first instinct was to ignore them, but they were pretty loud, and my friends started noticing. I felt my heart pounding. Like I didn't want to deal with this drama in front of everyone. But my friends? They had my back. A few of them literally formed a circle around me, like they were some kind of human shield. It was kind of funny, but also super reassuring. I wasn't alone in this. Eventually, I had to go over and talk to them. I walked up, keeping a safe distance, and said, "What do you want?" My mom started going on about how I wasn't answering their calls or texts, and how they were worried about me. I almost laughed. Now they were worried? After kicking me out and ignoring me for days? Then they dropped the real reason they were there. My grandparents, the ones with all the money, had found out about what they did to me, and now my parents were freaking out because they were scared of losing their inheritance. Yeah, that's what this was about. Not me, not my well-being, just money. They didn't care about fixing things with me. They just wanted to make sure they didn't lose their precious payday. I stood there staring at them, not even knowing what to say. It was like everything I'd always suspected was laid out in front of me. They didn't care about me. They never had. And now they were only trying to reel me back in because it benefited them, not me. I told them I wasn't coming home. Not now, not ever. And then I turned around and walked away. Their voices faded behind me as I rejoined my friends, who were all watching the whole thing go down. I don't know what my parents did after that. I didn't look back to find out. All I knew was I was done with them. Completely done. And for the first time, I felt free. When I got back to Aunt Lydia's that day, I told her everything. She wasn't surprised. She said something like, "It's always about money with them." And she was right. But you know what? It didn't matter anymore. I had Aunt Lydia, and I had people who actually cared about me. That's all I needed. Update 1. So, after the whole school confrontation with my parents, I thought maybe things would settle down, you know? Like they'd get the message that I wasn't coming back and we could all just move on. But of course, that would be way too simple for my life. A few days went by and I was feeling pretty good. Aunt Lydia was being her usual awesome self, making sure I was comfortable and all that. It was like the first time in forever that I wasn't constantly stressed or waiting for the next bad thing to happen. I'd even started to get into a routine, school, hanging out with my friends, coming back to Aunt Lydia's place and just chilling. Things felt normal, or at least as normal as they could be after getting kicked out of your house. But then, the drama found its way back in, like it always does. It started with a message from Carla. I hadn't heard much from her since the whole eviction thing, other than that one text asking to talk, which I had pretty much ignored. But this time, she was blowing up my phone. Like, text after text. At first, I didn't even want to open them, but curiosity got the best of me. I mean, we were siblings. Maybe, just maybe, she was trying to make things right. Turns out, not really. Her text started off super casual, like she was trying to ease into something. "Hey, how are things at Aunt Lydia's? Hope you're doing okay?" Stuff like that. Then, out of nowhere, she drops this. "Mom and Dad are really upset. They think you're being unfair by not talking to them." Unfair? Really? I couldn't believe it. How was I the one being unfair here? I was the one who got kicked out. I was the one who got lied to. And now, somehow, I was the bad guy for not running back into their arms? I didn't reply right away. I needed to process it. I wasn't even angry at this point, more like exhausted. It was like every time I thought I'd escaped the drama, they found a new way to drag me back in. I was pacing around the living room trying to decide what to do when Aunt Lydia walked in. She took one look at me and knew something was up. "What's wrong?" she asked, sitting down on the couch. I showed her the text from Carla and she just shook her head. "They're trying to guilt trip you. Classic." And yeah, she was right. My parents were pros at the guilt game, and it seemed like they'd roped Carla into it now. But what really got to me was the next part of Carla's message. She said, "You know, it's not too late to fix things. If you come home, we can all move past this. Mom and Dad are ready to talk." Move past this? Like what? Pretend it never happened? Go back to living in a house where I didn't matter? Where I was just the extra kid they barely tolerated? No thanks. Aunt Lydia must have seen how frustrated I was getting because she put a hand on my shoulder and said, "You don't owe them anything. You know that, right?" And that's when it hit me. I didn't owe them anything. I didn't need to fix things. I didn't need to go back to that toxic situation just to make them feel better. It was like this weight lifted off my chest, and I realized I could actually say no. I could choose not to go back. I grabbed my phone, ready to respond to Carla, but then I hesitated. What was I supposed to say? I didn't want to come off as harsh, but I also didn't want to let her think I was caving to their guilt trip. So I kept it simple. I'm not coming back. I'm happy here. I hit send and waited. And waited. She didn't reply right away, which was honestly a relief. I was tired of the back and forth. I thought maybe that would be the end of it, but no. Not even close. A few hours later, my phone buzzes again. This time, it's my mom. She sent this long message about how I was tearing the family apart and how I needed to come home to make things right. It was filled with all this guilt-heavy language about family bonds and forgiveness, like I was the one who needed to apologize. I couldn't believe it. My mom was actually trying to make me feel bad for standing up for myself. She went on and on about how it was time to let go of the past and move forward together. But all I could think about was how they never once took responsibility for what they did. They never said sorry for kicking me out, never admitted they were wrong. All they cared about was making it look like everything was fine again. I was about to respond when Aunt Lydia chimed in again. "Do you really need to reply to that?" And she was right. I didn't. What was the point? It wasn't like anything I said was going to change their minds. They weren't looking for an actual conversation. They just wanted me to fall back in line. So I didn't reply. I blocked my mom's number. I know it sounds harsh, but I was done playing their game. I was done letting them mess with my head. The next day at school, I felt weirdly free. Like I'd finally broken away from all the nonsense. My friends were supportive too. They knew what was going on and kept checking in on me, making sure I was okay. It was nice having people around who actually cared. But of course, my parents weren't done. Later that week, Aunt Lydia got a call from them. I wasn't in the room, but I could hear bits and pieces. My dad was talking about family responsibilities and being mature, which was pretty ironic coming from the guy who literally kicked his kid out to make space for his grandkid. When Aunt Lydia hung up, she looked at me and said, "They're still trying to get you to come home, but don't worry, I shut it down." She told them straight up that I wasn't going back and that they needed to stop pushing me. She even threatened to get a lawyer involved if they kept harassing me, which I didn't even know she could do. But apparently she was serious about it, and honestly, that made me feel safer than I had in a long time. So, that's where things stand now. My parents have gone radio silent since Aunt Lydia's threat, and I haven't heard a peep from Carla either. It's been quiet, almost too quiet, but I'm not complaining. For once, I feel like I have control over my life, and that's something I never thought I'd have. I don't know what's going to happen next. Maybe my parents will give up and leave me alone, or maybe they'll keep trying to guilt trip me into coming back. But either way, I'm not going back. I've got Aunt Lydia, I've got my friends, and I've got a life that doesn't revolve around being ignored or mistreated. And for the first time, I'm okay with that. Update 2. So after all the drama with my parents trying to guilt trip me into coming home, things finally started to calm down a bit. Or at least I thought they did. I mean, it had been quiet for a while, too quiet. My parents went radio silent after Aunt Lydia's warning, and I hadn't heard from Carla since I told her I wasn't coming back. For a minute, I actually thought that maybe, just maybe, they'd backed off for good. But of course, nothing stays calm for long in my life. One evening, Aunt Lydia and I were just hanging out in the living room watching TV. It was one of those rare moments where I felt, I don't know, peaceful. Like everything was normal, or at least as close to normal as it gets. I wasn't thinking about my parents, school, or any of the usual crap. It was just me and Aunt Lydia watching some mindless show, and I was actually relaxed. Then my phone buzzed. I ignored it at first. I didn't want to ruin the moment, but it kept buzzing, over and over. Finally, I grabbed it and saw it was Carla, again. At first, I thought it was going to be more of the same. Her telling me how unfair I was being, how I needed to talk to mom and dad, blah, blah, blah. But this time, the texts were different. She wasn't mad. She wasn't trying to guilt trip me. Instead, she was apologizing, like full-on apologizing. "I'm sorry for everything," she wrote. "I should have stood up for you." I stared at the screen, not sure how to react. I mean, after everything, why now? Why was she suddenly sorry? Then she kept going. I didn't know they were going to kick you out. They told me you wanted to leave. I didn't think it would go this far. Now, that threw me off. I knew my parents lied about a lot of things, but I had no idea they'd lied to her too. Carla kept texting, explaining that our parents had spun some story about how I wanted to move in with Aunt Lydia, that I was totally on board with the whole thing. And she believed them. She even told me that she thought I was being selfish by not helping with the baby, which is why she didn't fight back when they kicked me out. She didn't realize how bad it actually was for me until she saw the stuff I posted online. It was a lot to take in. Aunt Lydia must have noticed the look on my face because she paused the show and asked, "What's going on?" I handed her the phone, not really sure what to say. She read through the texts, her face going from curious to a little surprised. "Well, that's something," she said, handing the phone back to me. "What are you going to do?" And honestly, I didn't know. Part of me was still angry at Carla, even though I could see that she'd been lied to just like I had. But another part of me, well, I felt bad for her. She was in a messed up situation too, dealing with all the pressure from our parents, the pregnancy, the lies. Maybe she wasn't the bad guy I thought she was. So I texted her back. I didn't jump right into forgiveness or anything, but I told her I appreciated the apology. I said I needed time to process everything, but that I wasn't mad at her anymore. That felt like the right thing to say, honest but not too harsh. Then Carla hit me with another bomb. She told me she was planning to move in with Matt, her boyfriend, and that she didn't want to live with mom and dad anymore either. Apparently, things had been getting really tense at home since I left, and she was feeling trapped. She said, "They're trying to control everything and I can't take it anymore." That made me pause. For so long, I thought Carla was the golden child, the one who always got everything she wanted from our parents. But now, hearing her side of things, it sounded like she was just as much a victim of their control as I was. It was weird, like I'd been seeing everything through this one lens, and now that lens was cracking, and the truth was a whole lot messier than I thought. She kept texting, saying how she felt bad for not standing up for me sooner, how she wished she'd done something before it got to this point, and for the first time, I felt like maybe we were on the same page. Maybe we weren't enemies after all. That night, I didn't sleep much. I just kept thinking about everything, about how messed up our family really was. It wasn't just me versus them anymore. Carla had her own struggles, and even though she'd let me down before, she was trying to make things right now. That had to count for something, right? The next day, I decided to meet up with Carla. I wasn't sure what was going to happen, but I figured we needed to talk face to face, not just over text. We agreed to meet at this cafe downtown Neutral Territory, so it wouldn't feel like either of us had the upper hand. When I got there, she was already sitting at a table by the window, looking nervous. That was weird to see too, Carla, the confident one, actually looking anxious. I sat down, and for a few seconds, we just kind of stared at each other, not really knowing how to start. Finally, she broke the silence. "I'm really sorry," she said, her voice quieter than I'd ever heard it. "I didn't know how bad it was for you. I was so wrapped up in my own stuff I didn't even notice." I nodded, not really sure what to say yet. It was hard to be mad at her when she was sitting there, looking genuinely sorry. I didn't know they were going to do that to you," she continued. "And when I found out, I didn't know what to say. I didn't know how to fix it." There it was. That guilt I knew she'd been carrying around. And maybe that was what I needed to hear. That she did feel guilty. That she knew she'd messed up. "I'm not mad at you anymore," I finally said. "I get it. They lied to you too. But I'm not coming back home, Carla. I can't." She nodded, tears in her eyes. "I wouldn't expect you to. I'm leaving too. I can't live with them anymore. They're trying to control everything about the baby, about Matt and me. I just can't do it." We sat there for a while talking about everything, about our parents, about how things had gotten so bad, about what we were both going to do next. It was strange, but in a way it felt like we were finally on the same side. For the first time, I felt like Carla actually understood me. When we finally left the cafe, I didn't feel completely at peace, but I felt like we'd taken a step in the right direction. Things weren't perfect, but they didn't need to be. For now, I was just glad that Carla and I were talking again, and that maybe, just maybe, we could start to fix what was broken. That night, when I got back to Aunt Lydia's, I told her everything that had happened. She smiled, nodded, and said, "Sometimes it takes hitting rock bottom for people to see things clearly." And maybe she was right. Maybe Carla and I had both hit that point, but at least now, we were climbing out of it together. Update 3. So after that meetup with Carla, things got, well, complicated, but also kind of clearer at the same time, if that makes any sense. I thought maybe after talking things through with her, we could just move on, go our separate ways, and leave all the family drama behind us. But, of course, that's not how life works, especially not in my family. A few days after I met Carla, Aunt Lydia and I were having one of our usual chill evenings. We just finished dinner, and I was getting ready to head up to my room when there was a knock at the door. Now, this doesn't sound like a big deal, but Aunt Lydia never has visitors at night. Like, ever. She's a quiet person, and her friends usually drop by during the day. So both of us were a little thrown off by the timing. Aunt Lydia looked at me with this puzzled expression like, "You expecting someone?" I shook my head and we both walked to the door. She opened it and, surprise, there stood my parents. I could feel my heart sink. Like, really? After everything, they had the nerve to show up here unannounced and try to get me back into their mess? I thought they'd given up after Aunt Lydia's threat to get legal involved. But nope, here they were, standing on her porch like nothing had happened. My mom had that fake concerned look on her face that she always pulls out when she's trying to manipulate me. My dad just stood behind her, looking awkward, like he'd rather be anywhere else. "Can we come in?" my mom asked, her voice dripping with fake sweetness. Aunt Lydia didn't even look at me before saying, "No, I don't think that's a good idea." I almost smiled at that. Aunt Lydia doesn't play around when it comes to setting boundaries. My mom's face dropped, and she sighed like she was the victim in all this. "We just want to talk to you, honey. Please." I wasn't having it. I'd been through enough, and I wasn't about to let them drag me back into their drama just because they suddenly decided they wanted to talk. I folded my arms and leaned against the doorframe, trying to keep my voice steady. "What's there to talk about? You kicked me out. You lied to Aunt Lydia. And now you just show up like everything's fine?" My mom's eyes got wide and she stammered, "It wasn't like that. We thought it was best for everyone." Best for everyone? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "You thought it was best to kick me out on my birthday because Carla's pregnant? Seriously?" My dad finally chimed in, his voice quiet. "We didn't handle things well, okay? But you need to come home." I laughed. I couldn't help it. "Why? So you can keep pretending like I don't exist while you bend over backward for Carla and the baby? No thanks." Aunt Lydia, sensing things were getting heated, stepped in. "Look, I think it's best if you two leave. He's made it clear he's not coming back." My mom wasn't giving up that easily, though. She started tearing up, the classic guilt trip move she always used when things didn't go her way. "We're your parents. We love you. We want to fix things." But here's the thing. I'd finally realized something. They didn't want to fix things for me. They wanted to fix things for them. They wanted to sweep everything under the rug, make it seem like we were one big happy family again. Also, they wouldn't have to deal with the fallout of their actions. But I wasn't playing along anymore. "You had plenty of chances to fix things," I said, my voice low but firm. "But every time you chose Carla. You chose her over me over and over again. So don't stand here and act like you care now." The silence that followed was heavy. My mom just stared at me, the tears still in her eyes. But this time, I wasn't falling for it. I wasn't going to be guilted into going back to a house where I was nothing more than an afterthought. My dad looked like he wanted to say something, but instead he just sighed and put a hand on my mom's shoulder. "Let's go," he muttered. My mom looked like she wanted to protest, but after a few seconds she turned and walked back to the car, her shoulders slumped. My dad followed her without another word. Aunt Lydia closed the door, locking it behind them, and turned to me. "You okay?" I nodded, but the truth was, I didn't know how to feel. Part of me was relieved. It felt like I'd finally stood up for myself, for real this time. But another part of me felt, I don't know, sad? Like no matter what I said, no matter how much I tried to cut them off, they were still my parents. And it sucked knowing they were always going to choose Carla over me. But that's the thing, isn't it? Family doesn't always mean what we want it to mean. Sometimes the people who are supposed to love you the most are the ones who hurt you the worst. And that's a hard pill to swallow. Later that night, I got a text from Carla. She said our parents had told her about what happened, and that she was sorry they had tried to force me back. She wasn't on their side this time, though. She said she understood why I didn't want to come home, and that she was moving in with Matt, like she'd told me before. She ended the text with, "I'm proud of you for standing up for yourself." And you know what? That hit different. Coming from Carla, the one person I'd always thought was part of the problem, hearing her say that made me realize I wasn't alone in this. Maybe we weren't as close as some siblings, but we were starting to get there. I showed the text to Aunt Lydia, and she smiled. "You've come a long way, you know that?" I shrugged, trying to play it cool, but deep down, I knew she was right. I wasn't the same kid who'd been kicked out on his birthday. I'd learned to stand up for myself, to choose what was best for me, and not just go along with what other people wanted. The next morning, I woke up to a quiet house, sunlight streaming in through the windows, and for the first time in a long time, I felt free. No more pretending, no more walking on eggshells, just me, in a place where I was wanted. And that felt pretty damn good.